houses there currently is in the Netherlands. And the forecast is that this amount only is going to be more and more. Then we have 900,000 people between the age of 20 and 35 years old who are still living at their parents' house while they actually want to buy a house themselves. But the reason why these people don't own a house yet is because of the rising housing prices. As you can see here, in 2015, the average price of a house used to be 230,000 euros, which now in 2022 is 428,000 euros. So nowadays, houses are being sold for the average price 428,000 euros. Last year, this was 395,000 euros. When you want to buy a house in the Netherlands, you can get a mortgage to finance the house. But the other part, you have to finance yourself. And this comes down to 5 to 10% of the market value of the house. Which means if you want to buy a house nowadays for, let's say, an average price, you need to finance yourself 20,000 to 40,000 euros. And personally, I think this is a lot of money. And especially for starters, I think this is a big amount of money. This is a big amount of money, but how are we supposed to buy a house then? Well, I am worried about my own future and actually about the future of my whole generation. Although I'm not in a position yet of buying a house, I can still imagine how it feels like for a starter nowadays. And this feeling, this reminds me of a game I used to play with my dad when I was younger. And I think you all probably know this game. It is called Monopoly. The game which always ends up in a fight. But like I said, me and my dad used to play this a lot when I was younger. And we are both very competitive when it comes to playing games. And I think that's the reason why my mother never joined us. But from the moment my father had bought the Kalverstraat and the Leidsestraat, which is the most expensive street on the whole Monopoly board, then I was so frustrated. But after a few rounds, he bought his first house. Later he bought 7 more houses, followed by 2 hotels. From that moment, I knew I was gonna lose. But you know, I didn't give up. I owned 2 streets myself, so I still had some chance to win. But at a certain moment, I had to cross the most expensive street, which my father owned. And I was repeating to myself, I had the dice in my hand, and I said to myself, throw 10, throw 10. So I threw the dice, and I started rolling. And the first dice landed on a 5, so I had still some hope. However, the second dice turned out to be a 4, which made a total of 9, and I had to go to the Kalverstraat. And I had to pay my dad 2,000 euros, but I only had 1,500 euros left in my pocket. So I was bankrupt, and my father won the game. But I still remember this feeling of pure frustration, and I felt so powerless, and I felt like my dad had all the power on the board because he simply owned the most expensive street on the board. But this feeling of frustration I also have when I think about the current situation on the housing market. But I still feel this frustration when I think about the housing market. Because currently, the housing is a market which is needed by supply and demand. And as you all might know, when the demand is high and the supply is low, the prices will go up. And that is exactly what is happening right now. Like I said, the prices are rising. But the rising of the prices and the shortage of houses are not the only causes for the housing crisis. There are more people involved. For example, the property investors. And these are people who invest in houses, they rent it to others in order to gain money from it. Since the taxes on equity are way less than the taxes on labor, it is interesting for investors to invest in houses because they can gain a passive income and therefore it's being used as a revenue model. But I think that takes away the opportunities for starters to buy a house. Because, for example, when a starter wants to buy a house, there's a big chance the property investor will be interested in buying that house too. But the difference between a property investor and a starter is that the property investor has way more money than a starter does. So the investor can easily overbid the house price with 10,000, 20,000 or even 100,000 euros and they still will make revenue. And I think that is just so unfair. And the government used to have way more influence on the housing than it has now, because first it was only the housing, but now it has become a housing market. But what is interesting, I told you about the property investors. They think that they are the solution to the problem, instead of them being part of the problem. They say we offer the possibilities for starters, instead of taking away the possibilities. So, in that case, should there then be more property investors? So there will be more opportunities for starters to rent a place instead of buying it, because they're not able to buy it anyway. Well, like I said, there are a lot of people involved in the housing crisis. And yeah, how do we make sure that we meet everyone's needs? Well, I think there is no such a simple solution to this housing crisis. There are a lot of people involved, and what I see happening is that everyone is pointing at each other. And what I wanted to tell you about property investors, I think we can make a division between property investors who offer you a house and property investors who offer you a home. For the people who live in a student house, you'll probably recognize this. A landlord who offers you a place to stay, but asks a lot of money. That's what I consider as a property investor offering you a house. What I mean with a property investor offering you a home is someone that offers you a nice and affordable place to stay. They care for the house and they care for the people that live there. And their main goal is not making as much money as possible. Well, like I said, I think this is a big problem on the housing market right now. There is no simple solution and everyone is pointing at each other. Everyone sees this problem from their own perspectives and have their own opinions. But I think if we at least try to understand each other, to understand other perspectives, we can find a way to help each other. Thank you.